All right, you know what that sound means? Welcome into KBO Chats Alive. I'm Sam Pascal alongside Eric Halterman, and we are breaking down the entire KBO slate of action tonight. Rain might be an issue, but hopefully we should have some great action going today. Eric, how you feeling right now with some KBO action? I know we just talked, but how you doing?
I'm doing good. Some nice fall weather here. We've got football season starting up. We've got two baseball leagues coming down the stretch. It's a good time out here in Chicago. How's it out in San Francisco? Is the sky the appropriate color yet, or no?
It is indeed on fire, much like the KT Wiz. But yeah, no, it's on fire right now, and it's not some great air quality, but it's great to watch some KBO action play out and just kind of focus on that. So all is good when we got some KBO going on. I do got to say the scoreboard last night was very interesting. We had two teams score 8 runs, but yet lose, and it was weird because both the opposing teams at one scored 13 runs. So two games of 13-8. Two teams scored five, and two teams scored one as well. A lot of parity, unusual there, but should be a good one tonight with game two. So we can see what happens within the final series. Anything to say in terms of standings? Anything to look out for since we last spoke? The Giants were the only team that have gone undefeated since we talked last.
Yeah, not a ton of movement in the last 2 days. We've got the interesting situation where, depending on how you sort, you got a different team in second place. If you like win percentage, the Twins are in second. If you like games back, it's the Heroes. A bit of an odd one there. I think that's because the Heroes, being in the only dome, they don't get rained out nearly as much as everyone else. So as you can see, they've won four more games than anybody, but they've also lost four more than the Dinos. It'll be interesting to see if that's a factor down the stretch. In theory, they should be a little bit more well rested, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough to make a huge difference.
Definitely something unusual. We might see the Major League Baseball season with the different number of games being played, but the KBO having that little quirk right now is definitely something to look out for. So that's the league overview. Let's dive into our games. First up, we got the KT Wiz taking on the Dinos in one of the best series on the slate right now. I love Drew Rozinski, but when we look at recent performance, you might have to take Cuevas. What do you think here in this Dinos Wiz matchup?
It's definitely an interesting one. Two pretty similar teams, really, some really strong lineups, some good pitching at the top of both rotations, though really no healthy starters without at least some question marks on either side. Um, Cuevas had a great start his last time out. I believe he was 1 out shy of a complete game against the Heroes, but that followed a 6 start stretch in which he walked four more batters than he struck out. But somehow he hasn't been giving up runs over that stretch. He hasn't really been punished. In 9 of his last 10 starts, he's allowed 3 or fewer earned runs. So in the most straightforward sense, he's on quite a good run. I would have thought that regression was coming, but instead it was actually the exact opposite against a pretty good lineup from Kiwoom. So I'm not filled with the most confidence about him right now, but you have to say he's been keeping runs off the board for quite a long time. So I think he's got a chance to put in a good performance here against the Dinos, like he did last time out when, he only struck out 2 guys last time he faced the Dinos, but he threw 6 scoreless innings. So it's been working for him.
Yeah, and on the other side, Drew Rozinski, wish I could say the same. Looks like his strikeout numbers are at least kind of back to where they should be. Walks have always been a question mark for him. Where are we at with Rozinski? Is he an ace? Is he now just middle of the pack? Where do we stand with him?
I think he's still an ace who is overcoming a bad stretch. He had a 5 start run where he had an ERA of 7.33 and a WHIP of 189. That was before his last 2 when he was completely solid. Just a 3.75 ERA and a 1.17 WHIP in his last 2 starts. Though it is just 10 strikeouts against 5 walks. So it's not necessarily his most elite performances. But I feel a lot better about him than I did, 2 weeks ago when he was coming off that stretch where he had 3 out of 5 starts that were all quite poor. So I would still think he's an ace who's not pitching at his best. And that's probably on the whole a little bit better than Cuevas. If you look at their season-long numbers, very similar walk rates, 7.2% for Cuevas, 7.7% for Rozinski. Both of that is slightly better than league average, but not by a ton. Cuevas actually has a below-average strikeout rate, 16.9%, Rozinski is above average by about the same amount at 20.4%. So on the whole, that says to me that Rozinski is the better pitcher, but he has been slightly shakier of late, though again, it depends how much faith you have in Cuevas continuing to keep runs off the board despite not really striking guys out.
In case you're just tuning in, this is KBO Chats Live. We welcome in Barry, longtime viewer. Looking forward to a great show. We're getting started here with two pretty solid pitchers. Now turning our attention to the offenses here. A guy we talked about last time, Yu-Ji Yang, had a home run. He's looking pretty hot. This game was one of the ones that had this 13-8 score. Rojas Jr., 441 average since September 1st. Altair, 6 RBIs last night. How do you think they fare against the mediocre to above average pitchers right now?
It's two lineups that have a bunch of guys who are super hot. Yu-Ji Young's riding a 10-game hitting streak. He's got an OPS of 1174. But on the other side, Mel Rojas has a 9-game hitting streak, OPS of 1453, and his teammate Jae-Gyun Hwang has an 11-game hitting streak with an OPS of 1265. So some of the biggest names on both lineups are at their best right now. So it's a really great matchup, given that we've got such strong lineups against some pitchers who, even when they're not at their best, you have to say they're at least above average arms.
Yeah, a lot of guys hot right now, like you said. Who do you think has the better matchup? Is there anything you look at, maybe stadium-wise or handedness? Two right-handed pitchers. Is there any edge, maybe with Rojas being a switch hitter or Sungbum not being left-handed, that you look for?
That's an interesting one. Both teams have a decent amount of balance, especially since Rojas is a switch hitter. They got 3 guys in the top 4 with a platoon advantage for the Wiz. The first 3 hitters for the Dinos have the platoon advantage there. So not a lot to split them there either. And you could give the nod to the Dinos just based on their season-long strength. But I think it's worth noting the Dinos, a full 2 months ago on July 10th, they were 22 games over 500. They're now 21 games over 500, so they've been technically a below 500 team for the last 2 months. So in that sense, the Wiz have been the hotter team for an extended period. They're both, again, quite similar teams. So I think I'm going to lean slightly their way, but it's quite close on basically every front here.
So we're liking the KT Wiz. In terms of the total here, do we see another 20-plus runs tonight? Or do you think Rozinski and Cuevas are capable of keeping these offenses in check?
I do think that the pitchers are pretty good. I think if you were ever going to pick the under with these two lineups, it would be with pitchers like this. Again, I'd feel more comfortable in that if they had been super convincing lately. And there is, of course, the bullpen problem. Who knows what could happen in the final couple innings. I think the pitchers are good enough that I'm going to side Wiz and under, but it's quite close on both fronts there.
And that's under 10.5 runs, according to PointsBet. That's the odds we're going with tonight. Wiz and the under 10.5. Moving on now, we have the Deuce Bears taking on the Kia Tigers. Deuce won last night, 5-4. Ju-Hwan Choi had a single in the ninth that put them on top, because these two teams were very close throughout the game yesterday. In terms of the pitching tonight, Won-Ju Choi goes for the Bears, and he's been a killer find for them. I know Flexen's back, only 3 innings when he last pitched, but this guy, 1.57 ERA in his last 23 innings pitched. Do I dare say he's close to, if not maybe better than Alcantara?
I think he doesn't quite have the elite strikeout and walk numbers to back that up, but I think he's definitely the number 3 starter that they needed to find. They were just getting nothing from the back half of their rotation early. They were sort of rotating through guys when they needed someone. Nobody really stepped up whenever they needed a spot start, but Won-Jun Choi took over when Chris Flexen broke his foot. It's just about 2 months ago. He's had 9 starts since joining the rotation, 10 starts total. He had 1 early in the year, but over that 9-start stretch, it's a 2.83 ERA and a 1.28 WHIP. Not elite strikeout numbers, 6.6 strikeouts per 9 over that stretch as a starter. But he's getting better as the year's gone on. He's really settling into that role. In his last 4 starts, a 1.57 ERA and a WHIP under 1. So I think at the very least, he's a solid number 3, and I would feel a lot better about the Bears come playoff time if they can start the series with Alcantara, Chris Flexen, and Wanjun Choi, if Choi stays this good.
That'd definitely be the dream for the Deuce fans looking to get back to the Korean Championship there. Over on the Tigers side, a team I picked to go to the championship against the Dinos. Wish they had a little better starting pitching going tonight. An ERA over 7 in his last 24 innings pitched. Any hope for him as being a solid rotation member for the Tigers tonight?
Yeah, I've said it in the past that one of the things that was so good about the Tigers early is their rotation was just deeper than anybody else. It was 4 deep in terms of truly reliable starting pitching. And Im was a big part of that. He's a guy who had ERAs of in the high 5s and low 6s the last 2 years. There wasn't really any reason to believe he was going to be much this year. But in his first 9 starts, he had an ERA under 3, 296, striking out 40 and walking just 9. He looked like, number 3, if not better, starter. But he's regressed hard. In his last 7 starts, it's an ERA of 6.95. Just a 29-15 strikeout to walk ratio is a lot more mediocre. So unfortunately, he's looking a lot like how he did in the past 2 seasons. It's not every start, though. He does have one very good start pretty recently against a team as good as the Dinos, I believe 2 starts ago. 8 strikeouts, 2 walks, 2 hits, just 1 run in 6 innings pitched. So he is still capable of those performances like he was putting in the first half of the season. If I hadn't seen that one recently, I would be all over the Bears in this one. I still would be for the Bears because Im on the whole has been much worse lately. But there is a path to anyone who wants to pick the Tigers. All you have to do is look at a start like that against the lineup as good as the Dinos and say, maybe Im does still have it.
Yeah, very promising, but maybe not super promising was that last start against the Wyverns on the road. 4 earned runs, 9 hits, just 4 strikeouts. So nothing too crazy. Definitely the pitching advantage for the Bears. In terms of the offense, I might have to go with the Bears here. I mean, what they've done recently, I got to say, Jose Miguel Fernandez, we know how well he can hit, but I believe the last 4 games he's had 4 walks, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's one of his best 4-game stretches of walks all year. So maybe he's kicking another gear, and that lineup is one of the deepest, like we've said time and time again. Would you give the Bears the advantage offensively here?
Yeah, I think definitely. That's an interesting point about Fernandez. I would assume normally he's just already has a base hit. He doesn't need to waste time waiting around for a walk. But he's a fantastic all-around hitter. Really, that stretch, Fernandez, Jailo, Shihwan Kim, 2 through 4 is the best run of lefties in the league, should give a righty like Im trouble. But they've got more than that. Kunwoo Park, leadoff man, even down to 6 at Kilman Her. All of those are guys who've been quite good, at least for much of the season, if not the entire season. So it's very deep, very, very strong at the top. The Tigers can almost match them with their best few hitters. Preston Tucker and Hyungwoo Choi have been quite good and good lately. Decent enough plays maybe against Wanjun Choi tonight, even though he has been quite good lately. He doesn't necessarily have that much of a track record, so starting somebody as good as Tucker couldn't be ruled out. Ji-Won Na, actually their cleanup guy, is riding an 11-game hitting streak with an OPS over 1,100 over that stretch. So it's decent stretch to the heart of that order. It's helped the Tigers go on a bit of a run recently. They had won 7 of 8 before they lost the series opener here. So they'll make it competitive. And if Im has a good game, which he does sometimes, they have a shot here. But there's more to that Bears lineup than there is to the Tigers, and they've shown that throughout the year. So I'd give them the edge here.
Now, I don't want to put too much on yesterday's game, but the top 6 batters for the Kia Tigers only had 3 hits in total. 2 of them came from Na in that cleanup spot. Is that concerning at all, especially with Choi going tonight and what he can do on a night-to-night basis?
Yeah, I mean they need to get a lot from Preston Tucker and Hyungwoo Choi, just because the lineup just isn't that deep. Those guys had been doing quite well for a while. We'll forgive them one cold game, but we know that Preston Tucker has his cold streaks at times. If that was the start of a stretch where he gets 3 hits in 6 games or something, that's going to be a big worry for the Tigers, especially because their right in the thick of a playoff race. They're 2 games out of the final wild card spot. They cannot afford a cold stretch from either of those guys. I wouldn't say they're on one yet, but it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Tucker definitely going to have to step up. And this game is at 5:30 a.m. Eastern. I'm assuming you're going to go with the Bears. How about the total set at 10.5? Do the Bears offense, can they reach that by themselves against Im tonight?
Im's been poor enough for most of his recent starts that I will take the over along with the Bears. Bears lineup's just so good unless you have a really good pitcher. I would generally lean over with them. And, Wanjun Choi's been good, but if they can get into the Bears bullpen, the Tigers can score some runs too. And, Choi hasn't done this that long. It's only about a 9-start stretch. So I think there's more paths for this one to end up over.
I like that too. I have a little bit more faith in Choi. We'll see what he does tonight against Preston Tucker, but we'll have to see. Hopefully he can be that number 3 for them as they continue to stay in that playoff hunt. Moving on now, we got the Wyverns and the Eagles, one of the most fun matchups there is. SK at least snapped their losing streak last night with a 5-1 victory. Both starters here have been on horrible stretches. The ERA is over 5 over the last 3 starts. What are we looking in terms of the arms going tonight in this Eagles-Wyverns matchup?
Yeah, the Eagles didn't want the Wyverns to be also making history this season and tying their longest ever losing streak. They made sure that they have a monopoly on record setting. So good for them. 11 losses in a row for the Wyverns before that one. But yeah, it's 2 pitchers that I've liked at times this season, though, as you mentioned, they are not at their best at the moment. Sungwon Moon, ERA of 5.79 over his last 6. And that followed, though, a 10-start stretch where he had an ERA of 2.56. He was very reliable for a very long time and was kind of the only thing going for this Wyverns team for extended periods. He's not at that level right now. He's been pretty good, I think, in recent seasons. And his overall numbers this year is still slightly above average strikeout rate, slightly better than average walk rate. So on the whole, I think he's a good arm, which might be enough against the Eagles because they're the worst lineup in the league by quite some margin. But definitely his recent outings give you some pause there. On the opposite side, Shihwan Zhang, his last 4 starts before, not including his last one, but the 4 starts before that, he had an ERA of 7. But he did have a good outing against the Tigers. His last time out, just 1 run on 3 hits in 6 innings. So maybe he's back. He was always somebody who's interesting in that he strikes out a lot of guys, but doesn't really keep runs off the board, which makes him a decent fantasy play because you're quite likely to get good strikeout numbers. And then if he happens to not give up runs, good for you. Although he hasn't really had the same strikeout numbers recently. Those 6 strikeouts last time out, which is a good but not elite number, was his highest total since July. So he's been quite mediocre for a little while there. So it's two pitchers who have shown something, but not recently, although I'm sure they're pretty happy to be facing the lineups they're facing in this one.
Yeah, speaking of lineups, I noticed we have a Tyler White sighting. Has it been 3 weeks already? Is he healed up already? He got on base last night via a walk. He actually is still looking for his first KBO hit, I believe, but he did get on base previously with a hit by pitch. Is he someone you're kind of looking at to maybe break through and in his first kind of big way? I mean, if it's going to happen, I would think it'd be against the Eagles.
Yeah, definitely. He should be a big help to the Wyverns. He was legitimately good for at least one partial MLB season. I mean, he's shown something at the highest level, which a lot of these foreign hitters never really got the chance to. A lot of them, like, the Jose Fernandez's of the world or Jamie Romac's, they'll have some big league time, but they leave because they never even really got an opportunity. White was kind of bouncing around as that quad A guy and was legitimately good for a time, but not last year. So he's coming over for a chance to prove himself again. And like I said, he's had higher heights than most hitters in the KBO, foreign or local. So there's definitely the chance that he does stand out down the stretch. Not enough to have the Wyverns make a run, but with him and Jamie Romack and Jung Choi in the heart of the order, that's definitely something. They did just lose Dong Min Han for at least a bit to thumb pain. I think was what the note said, which doesn't necessarily sound like a long-term thing, but he would have helped. But at least they get White back. That should be an upgrade. So it's some good hitters at the heart of the order. Probably worth playing against a pitcher like Zhang, who's been pretty shaky lately.
Yeah, I saw a note, I believe, on Twitter with the Atlanta Braves scoring 29 runs. So the record for KBO, I believe, was 27. And we actually saw this Wyverns team almost break that a little while ago, scoring 26. The offense definitely has that pop. And I think it'd be on display tonight against Zhang. And with Moon pitching, I could see the Eagles maybe get a little out of hand as well. What's your pick on the total here? Set at 8.5, pretty low.
Yeah, given that it's that low, I think it's a pretty easy over. I mean, these are two pitchers who have shown something at times, which is, more than you can say for most pitchers on both of these two staffs. But given that they've been shaky lately, I think we'll go over. I've got more faith in Moon and more faith in the best hitters on the Wyverns that I'm going to go their direction as well.
Not a big Brandon Barnes guy, I see, but he has not proven anything. Much rather have Choi, Romack, and White if you're going to pick either of these teams to win. So moving on, we have maybe the best matchup. I like that Dinos KT Wiz, but this one is definitely very interesting with the 2 and 3. I don't know how we say that with the standings, but like we talked about earlier, but the 2 and 3 teams facing off with Brigham and Wilson, two pitchers that should be better, but when we look recently, they haven't been. Brigham has pitched 38 innings since returning, since actually August 1st, has a 4.5 ERA. And Wilson, great strikeout to walk numbers, but run prevention has not been there. 4 or more in 3 of his last 4 starts. I'm not sure what we're going to get from these pitchers tonight in this game.
Yeah, like you said, definitely good argument that this is the best matchup of the slate. Whoever wins it, I believe, will be the undisputed number 2 team in the standings, regardless of which way you look at it. I haven't actually double-checked that, but it should be true. And like you said, it's 2 talented former Major League pitchers who've had some issues lately. Jake Brigham looked like he was fully past his elbow issues. He had a 4-start stretch with an ERA of 1.44. But then he was lit up last time out, 6 runs in just 4.1 innings. It was against the Wiz, who are a good lineup. But I believe, speaking of good lineups, the Twins are even ahead of them. They're number 3. To go along with the best runs prevented this year, the Twins now are 3rd and 1st in the 2 categories, which demonstrates why they've been able to charge up the standings. I don't think that we should be too worried about Brigham's elbow necessarily. I'm willing to call it just one bad start, given that it had been good for 4 in a row. But he's had at least 2 trips to the injured list. It may even be 2 to the injured list plus 1 like delayed start or something. It's been multiple times that he's been dealing with an elbow here. So certainly a chance that last time's bad start was the start of those worries coming back. I think I'm mostly willing to say that, those 4 starts before it matter more to me. But he's not someone who's filled with the most confidence this year. Although if you do look at his season-long numbers, it's a league average walk rate with a 23.2% strikeout rate, which would be up there with the best qualified starters in the league if he had been able to stay healthy enough to throw that many. So it's some good parts about his line, even if the overall ERA is nothing special, and even if he's coming off a shaky outing.
Yeah, great stretch there, but that blow up against the Wiz back on September 5th is a little concerning. Moving over to Tyler Wilson, he's had to face some tough competition recently, but if this Twins team is going to rely on him as their number 1, number 2 guy, he's going to have to be able to quiet the Dinos. And he has not been able to do that recently, facing them twice, giving up 4 runs in each start. What are we expecting out of him facing it off against the Heroes?
Yeah, it's interesting. He's actually increased his strikeout numbers as the season's gone on. He struck out just 6.1 per 9 in his first 12 starts, and he jumped up to 8.5 strikeouts per 9 over his last 8 starts. But it hasn't necessarily translated to better run prevention, as you noted. In 3 of his last 4, he's allowed 4 more earned runs. So he hasn't been pitching like an ace. He really hasn't pitched like an ace all year. League average strikeout rate, walk rate about 2 ticks below league average, better than league average, 6.3% walk rate. That doesn't necessarily add up to an ace. And his overall ERA is noticeably worse than it was last year. Should be inadequate, but it is a tough matchup here. He did hold the Heroes to just 1 run in 2 times facing them recently. So that's definitely encouraging. So he's certainly capable of a strong outing here. But it has been some weird levels of inconsistency from him lately.
Yeah, we'll have to see what he can do tonight facing off against the Heroes offense, which has been unusual because Jung-Ho Lee, Addison Russell have not been great recently. Jung-Ho Lee just batting 171 since returning from injury, and Addison Russell batting just 200 since the beginning of the month. But then you got Hassan Kim hitting almost 500, 417, 2 home runs, and we're 10 days into September. I mean, is he all their offense right now? What can we expect from the bats of the Heroes?
Yeah, they do have, a pretty deep supply of top bats, although with Byung-Ho Park out right now and Dongwon Park hasn't been the same. Their catcher, he was very hot early, but has kind of regressed a bit. As they were one of those teams that went about 6 deep in guys I was very happy to recommend any day. They do have enough where they can afford a few guys getting cold, as you mentioned, Hassan Kim getting hot at the right time. If everybody clicked at the same time, I think they'd be one of the top lineups in the league. They believe they rank just 5th in run scoring. It's worth noting, I think they have the 2nd most pitcher-friendly park in the league, which is one of the reasons why that might be a little bit worse than you'd think. Although the Twins and Bears play in the most pitcher-friendly park in the league, and they're both ahead of the Heroes in scoring. So it's not as if we should say that that's exclusively up to the park. It's not like they play in, old school Giants or Padres park, not old school. That's the wrong phrase. But 10 years ago, I think both parks have gotten a little bit more hitter-friendly lately. But when they were at their lowest scoring, it's not like the Heroes play in anything like that. But again, yeah, they just have had not everybody been able to get hot at the same time. Hassan Kim is really good. There's talk of him coming over to the majors, at least from the preseason. He's expected to get posted mostly for money reasons, I think. He's a young, talented shortstop who does some of everything, turning 25 in just over a month. And he's got power, he's got average, he's got speed, he does everything, and he's gotten better as the season's gone on too. So he's certainly capable of leading a playoff team as a star hitter. If Jung-Ho Lee gets hot again, that's 2 young, excellent talents. Addison Russell, you still figure he's got time to come around. It's been uninspiring, though he is at least hitting for average. Only 1 homer and a slugging just 368 in what's now well over a month of games, nearly 2 months for him, about a month and a half. OPS of 731 isn't really what you want from your foreign hitter, but at least he can play middle infield and is hitting for contact. There's certainly a path for him to get hot, path for Jung-Ho Lee to get hot, but they're not at their best right now. Not a terrifying offensive force by any means.
Speaking of terrifying offensive force, that basically defines Roberto Ramos. He's cooled down maybe a little bit, still get some hits, not a ton of power in terms of last night's game. Hyun-Soo Kim, a guy we talked about before. Who are you targeting in the Twins lineup against Brigham tonight?
Yeah, those guys you mentioned, definitely worth a look. One guy I wrote up the other day is their leadoff man, Cheng-Gi Hong. He'll get the platoon advantage here as a lefty, and his hitting streak goes back. I've got to scroll down to find it. He's hitting 392 and on base at a 500 clip over his last 13 games. He's setting the table very well. Not a power hitter at all, 3 homers all season. But his on base percentage for the season is a 420. Just getting on base a ton. Good contact hitter who really knows how to take a walk. It's quite cheap, I believe, on DraftKings. And hitting in front of the likes of Kim and Ramos, like you mentioned, makes him a nice option, nice leadoff guy.
All right, that's the offenses and the pitchers we're looking at in this matchup, the best one we got on the slate. Who are you going to lean? Who's going to be the undisputed number 2 come this time tomorrow? The Heroes or the Twins?
Yeah, with talent but questions in both starting pitcher, I think I'd look to which lineup I trust more, and that has to be the Twins right now. They've been hitting quite well for a long time. They've been playing very well for now a very long time at this point. In their last 43 games, they're 28, 13, and 2. That's a winning percentage of 68%. That's so since July 16th. So nearly 2 months they've been playing like, absolutely elite team, a title contender for sure, maybe even the title favorites if you look at just the last 2 months or so. And the Heroes have had their stretches, but they're cooling off a bit. Their only wins in their last 6 games for the Heroes came against the Wyverns. So that reason for them is enough for me to side with the Twins. Again, if Jake Brigham hadn't had that last start, I think I would be going with the Heroes just because his previous 4 were really very good. But now that we're back to questioning him and questioning Tyler Wilson, I would side with the Twins lineup here.
Yeah, definitely not good when the only team you've beat is the Wyverns in recent memory. They were quite convincing wins in terms of their run production. That 15-run spot was a little concerning. But Brigham tonight hopefully should be able to muster up that number of runs. The total, though, he did give up 6 his last time out, and Wilson could give up 5. Are we looking at the over or the under at 9 runs?
Yeah, both pitchers have been unreliable, but I just feel like both of them are supposed to be quite good, and they've been pretty good for most of the time. So I would side with the under here, but it's a low under, 2 decent lineups, and all you really need is 1 bad performance. So there's definitely a path to the over.
All right, that's what we're looking at there. Barry also going towards the Twins. We'll see what Tyler Wilson can provide him tonight. Moving over to the final game on the slate. That's the Samsung Lions and the Lotte Giants. This game last night was unusually one of the ones that was 13-8. These lineups aren't crazy, but hey, I guess they can score now. Lions going with a bullpen day to day. I don't think we're going to get much length out of Lee tonight. While the Giants have So going, who's been pretty solid. I'm going to think you're going to go Giants here.
Yeah, I would probably lean that way. Again, like you said, given the bullpen game. Lions-Giants, I believe that's our only all-NFL battle for kickoff night here. Nice NFC matchup. Probably not 2 playoff contenders there. That's about the extent of the football analysis you'll get today. Too bad we could have gotten Giants, Eagles, and Bears lineup. Bears-Lions for 2 divisional rivalry games, but we got neither, unfortunately. But in actually relevant analysis, Lions really struggling, 6 wins in their last 20. Giants maybe getting back to it. They won 2 in a row and 4 of their last 6. They have something to play for, and that they're still just 4 games out of the wild card. Definitely wouldn't favor them to make it, but they definitely have reason to keep fighting, whereas the Lions, I think, safe to say they may be giving up. They don't have much of a chance to close the gap. What's the gap for them? Got to be pushing 10 games. It is exactly 10 games at this point. So I wouldn't see them playing for nearly as much down the stretch. Bullpen game for the Lions, Sungmin Lee. He's a 29-year-old who's thrown a total of 6.2 innings in the last 5 years. Can't imagine they're expecting much out of him. But I don't think he's going to pitch very long. The problem with a bullpen day for the Lions is that their bullpen's gotten a lot of work lately, 12.2 innings over the last 2 days. They had 1 short start in there, then a doubleheader, I believe, 2 days ago. They were able to get 8 innings from David Buchanan in one half of that doubleheader. But still, 12.2 innings over the last 2 days. I mean, anytime you get a bullpen game, you're getting not the best relievers in there generally. It's very rare that you see, a team's top 4 relievers all pitch 2.1 innings or whatever it is. So I would imagine even a mediocre lineup like the Giants could pick on some of the Lions' worst pitchers here. So I'd expect a decent amount of runs from them. It's not a terrible unit like you're showing there, sixth ranked on the season. A decent amount of depth at the top, but shallow on stars generally.
Yeah, offensively with the Giants, I got to say, Dae-Ho Lee, batting in that 4 spot. He's been on the rise recently. What do you think about the KBO legend tonight against a tired Lions bullpen.
Yeah, he's still got some pop. He's fallen off from his peak, but he's generally one of the cheapest starters at first base, and he's completely adequate in the role. Um, yeah, it's high batting average still and a decent amount of power. They also got Hassan back after a 2-game absence with a hamstring issue. Their lone lefty who hits anywhere near the top. Not sure that'll matter too much here. They are starting against lefty in Lee, but again, wouldn't expect him to go long here. So a couple of decent candidates from that Giants side. No, not many guys who are super compelling in terms of drawing you to their lineup, but given that it's going to be a bullpen day from one of the worst teams in the league, I think you could look at most of their top hitters here.
All right, and then on the Lions side, offensively, Jawook Koo batting in the third spot. Daniel Palka pretty much has provided nothing so far. Is there any value there, or is this going to be all Giants?
I mean, Palka, as long as he's cheap, worth a punt. He's hitting 208, but he's got 3 homers already. That's kind of what you get from him. You get some power and a lot of whiffs. Would imagine the Lions are hoping him to hit more than 208, but they probably take 250, 260 with big power, which he should be capable of. And Shihwan Zhang, definitely not an intimidating arm. He's had some decent outings very recently, but if you still look over his last 8, it's a 5.88 ERA and a 1.81 WHIP. He's way too much of a pitch-to-contact guy. Strikeout rate of just 12.2%. It's better than Hee Kwon Yu of the Bears, but not very many other guys. It's not to say that the Lions have a ton of guys who are going to punish you for allowing that much contact, but this could be a good Palka game if, So can't strike out anybody. Then even Daniel Palka may not strike out against him. So could be a shot there. If he allows enough contact, somebody like Palka should be able to punish him.
I like that. You can see So face the Lions back on the 22nd of August, just 4 strikeouts. No walks, but only 4 Ks. What are we going with tonight? Giants, and the total is set at 10.5. Seems pretty high. I mean, they reached that easily last night with that 13-8 victory I mentioned. Where are we going today?
I would expect the over. Bullpen day on its own is probably enough to get there unless you had peak Dan Straley going for the Giants, and you don't. So with 1 bullpen day and 1 shaky starter, even 2 mediocre lineups should be able to hit the over here.
And then we're going Giants as well. Just got to bank on so because of that bullpen.
Yeah, slightly better lineup, and would rather have a back end starter than a bullpen game most of the time.
All right, that's what we're looking at. That's all 5 games. Gotta say, again, love the KBO. Very compact league overall. That's all 5 of them for tonight. Hopefully these will be played. The Bears-Tigers is questionable with that 66% chance of rain. But if we do see all games in action, Eric, what are your top 3 picks in the entire slate of action?
Yeah, I think I would start with the Bears. There's no super obvious blowout here because, the Wyverns and Eagles play each other, and even the Lions just play the Giants. So it's that the bottom 4 teams facing each other means there's no super obvious pathway. Bears lineup's enough better than the Tigers. Ki Young Im has been poor over the second half of the season. Wan Jun Choi has been good lately. So that's enough for me to go there for number 1. Number 2, might go with that over in that game we just talked about just because no reliable pitching. Wish the hitters were a bit better, but bullpen day versus a back-end starter seems like a pretty obvious over to me there. Number 3, it stays pretty tough, but I think I might go Giants over Lions. So I'd really just think a bullpen day from a team that's kind of given up. Just does not inspire me with any confidence. If it was against any team that was better than the Giants, that would probably be the pretty obvious top pick. But I think just looking at the pitching matchups in the other 3, Cuevas Rozinski is quite close, and those 2 lineups for the Wiz and Dinos are quite close. Moon versus Zhang for the Wyverns and Eagles, pretty tight-ish. I guess you give the edge to Moon there. And Brigham and Wilson and the Heroes Twins, also pretty tight. So we got just full of tight pitching matchups from teams whose lineups are pretty similar too. So it's one of the more difficult slates I can remember, I think.
Yeah, definitely a challenge with all this parity in the pitching. Even when you look at the Wyverns Eagles, you pick the team that's playing against them. They're playing against each other, and the pitchers are about the same when you look at their record and their ERA. So, yeah, I think it's unusual, to say the least, to be going to a Lotte Giants Samsung Lions game for two of the top three picks. But I like you picking up on that bullpen game and really looking for the Giants to bully the Lions tonight. And that's what we're looking at overall. Barry saying maybe the SK Hanwha over, another pair of bad pitchers. Would you agree with that one? Or do you think Moon, you like him enough in the past that maybe he could do something and quiet that already weak Eagles lineup?
Yeah, that's what keeps me from calling that one of the best picks, just because it doesn't take much to quiet the Eagles, and Moon has shown himself to be capable of that for most of the season, if not quite recently. But don't hate the pick there, especially with Tyler White coming back, giving the Wyverns another bat might be enough. If the lineups were any better, I'd be pretty happy with that over, given the recent performance from those two pitchers, but they're not, which is why these teams are so bad. So yeah, not super confident in that, but definitely don't hate it.
All right. Barry also noting should be an interesting night around the league. Hopefully these will all be played. And that's all we got for you. We talked about some notable injuries, top picks there. Bears over in the Lotte Samsung game, and the Giants to win that Lotte Samsung matchup. As always, check out rotowire.com for the best fantasy and sports betting information. Follow us on Twitter at RotoWireKBO. Our personal handles are here as well. And that's all we got for you. Be back on Monday. Should be regular time. Stay tuned to Twitter if there are any changes. But that's all I got. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys.